Good morning, everyone. Today is 1 May 2003. I'm Harry Ziegler, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in California. Part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of World War II. In conjunction with the Veterans Oral History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participate in our country's military conflicts. I'm here at the Palm Springs Air Museum along with fellow volunteer David Thompson. Today we have the honor and privilege of interviewing Harry Dillon. So nice to have you here, Harry.
Thank you.
Now please spell your full name and tell us where and when you were born.
My name is Harry James Dillon. I was born in Long Beach, Long Island, County of Queens, New York.
And what do you remember a little bit about the history of your family, of when they came to America and how all that all happened?
Well, my forefathers came from Ireland by way of Ellis Island, and they were from County Cork and County Mayo, mostly Mayo, and they lived in Hollis, New York, and my parents lived in Long Beach, where I was born.
Now, did your parents meet in the U.S. or in Europe?
They met here in the U.S. They were all my parents were born here in the United States.
And was your mother also Irish?
Yep. Yeah.
And so was it a little enclave of Irish people? Is that where they were living?
I'm not sure. I know my maternal grandfather worked in the garment district at Chase Manhattan Bank in New York City, and my paternal grandfather, he was the European exporter for Packard motor cars, mainly to Italy and Sicily. So when the Hoods would be deported back to Italy and Sicily, the Packard would send him over to take the order for their new Packard when they got over there. He was like a dealership unto himself.
And can you remember much? Did your family drive a Packard by chance?
Oh, the garage was full of Packards.
What did you remember about them? Because that's one of my favorite old cars.
They were just big, huge cars. I remember a story my grandmother used to tell. My dad snuck one of the cars out of the garage, and he and a friend of his were my dad was dating my mother, and his friend was dating would be his wife, and my dad was going down the Long Island Parkway, and he had a suit on, and he was speeding, and a motorcycle cop pulled him over and asked for his driver's license. So my dad reached in like he was going to get his wallet out of the inside pocket, and I think the policeman must have thought he was a hood or something driving this big Packard. So he said, "Well, I know you got one. It's all right."
So what are your early memories of living?
Well, we moved from New York to Florida just before the end of the war. We lived on an island near the mouth of Tampa Bay, and the best part about living there, when the hurricane warnings were up, we didn't have to go to school. And it was almost a Tom Sawyer childhood. Every kid I knew, they all had boats, and we used to spend our free time visiting an island called Mullet Key that had an old fort on it with big cannons and things like that. Everybody had dogs, and would hunt raccoons and any kind of varmint we could chase down.
Now, how far was it to the mainland then from the island?
We were about a mile from the mainland, off the main coast. We were on the west coast of Florida.
So was there a town or something there then?
Yeah, such as it was, the island was called Madeira Beach, and it's in a I think they call it now it's called the Holiday Isles. It runs from Clearwater clear down to the mouth of Tampa Bay, the last island being, I believe, Egmont Key.
And were members of your family in the service during World War II?
No, my father was in the Merchant Marine. His last assignment during the war, he was captain of the training ship, the American Sailor, at the Florida Maritime Academy in St. Petersburg. And from there, after the war, when they closed the Maritime Academy, he went on regular merchant ships after that.
So he had a captain's license?
Oh yeah, well, any tonnage, any waters.
And did you get to sail with him at all?
From the time I was 3 or 4 years old, I used to go on the training ship with him when they would take cruises with the cadets, and he was captain of a ship that went to Costa Rica for a while. It was a banana boat, what they called a reefer ship, and I believe it was a subsidiary of United Fruit. It was Hamilton Brothers Steamship Company, and he was captain of that ship. I used to go during the summer. I'd sail with him, go to Costa Rica, spend a day or two there, load up, and then come back to Tampa.
Now, did your mother go on any of these trips at all?
Yeah, she went on one, got seasick, and that was the end of it.
Now, were there other siblings in your family?
I had one brother.
Younger or older?
He's younger.
Okay.
What's his name? What's his name?
Oh, his name is, Ned, they call him Ned. It's Edward James. He's named after my grandfather.
Uh-huh.
What was your father's name?
My father's name was James Edward.
Okay.
And so they called it Edward James, huh?
Yeah.
And your mother, what was her name and her maiden name?
Elise Bernadette Engel, E-N-G-E-L. She's still alive. My father passed away in February of '86.
Ingle sounds British.
Pardon me?
Ingle sounds British.
Yeah.
English.
Yeah.
What part of Ireland where your ancestors come from?
Mostly from Mayo,
County Mayo.
County Mayo.
Have you been over there?
I have, yes. I was there, laid over for a little while on the way to Saudi Arabia during Desert Storm. We landed at Shannon, and it was World Airways. Naturally, there was something wrong with the plane, and so we had about a day and a half layover there till they got the plane fixed. And so I rented a car with another guy who drove out to Mayo and kind of looked the town over and spent the night at a youth hostel, and went back to the airport.
You guys were talking earlier, both of you are Harrys, and you were talking about about your name and.
Oh, yeah. Well, when my parents named me after my grandfather, and so when they took me to the Catholic Church in Long Beach to get me baptized, the Irish Church said, well, there's no saint named Harry. I guess as far as if it's left up to me, there never will be. But so he wouldn't baptize me Harry. He baptized me Henry. But I've never gone by Henry. I guess there's a Saint Henry, but no Saint Harry.
Yeah. Harold, maybe Saint Harold, but.
Now, you're growing up there on the island. How long did you live on the island?
We lived there until late '55. There was a strike on the Gulf Coast ports, Master Mates and Pilots Union, and we had to eat. And so my dad got a ship out of San Francisco with Pacific Far East Lines. He knew somebody with the steamship company, and they got him a job. So after he was settled with the steamship company, he came and moved us. We moved to Marin County. We lived in Larkspur first, and then later San Rafael. And that's where I enlisted in the Navy, was San Rafael.
And just going back a little on your dad,
Yeah, okay.
was your memory and your times on the different ships go back far enough to remember whether there were changes in the ships that you noticed as you got older and the improvements in the shipping? And
Oh, sure. Well, the first ship I was on was the American Sailor, and it had gun crews that they trained right along with the cadets that were going to be merchant mariners. And then I remember the next ship, I guess, was with Lykes, and that was a reefer ship, and went aboard that in New Orleans, sailed from New Orleans to Tampa, and it was much bigger than the American Sailor, and no guns. And then the ship that I was on going back and forth to Costa Rica, in fact, the name of the port we went to down there was Port Lemon, like lemon, you know, and it was a converted LST that they had put a clipper bow on and made the entire well deck into reefer space. And it was straight diesel, where the American Sailor was a steamship, and the Lykes ship was a diesel electric.
now, the Tampa Bay area was pretty famous from Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. And did any of that come up at all as a kid? Well, you know, the troops coming over from Camp Cuba Libre in Jacksonville to Tampa. And
One thing I vividly remember, it was right at the end of the war. We lived on a street called Del Mar Terrace, and right across from us there was a big open field, and I remember that they were bringing troops back from Europe, and they had no place to put them. They were putting them on MacDill and so on, and they ran out of room there, so they had them pitch tents in this big field in front of our house. Now, this was in St. Petersburg. This wasn't, we hadn't moved to the island yet. They had all these army troops, and these guys were all battle hardened, and they were living in tents across the street. And I remember I came home from being over there one day when they were having lunch, and my mother said I started swearing like up the street, and I had learned it all across the way. I was about probably 4 years old, and it was right at the end of the war, right after the end.
that's good. Now, why did you elect to go in the Navy? Was it your dad and the ships?
Probably because of my upbringing, being going to sea when I was a child and whatnot, and I just always had a fascination for the Navy.
And your brother, as he's coming along, what kind of interest is he?
Well, he had no interest in being in the military at all, and I could tell you a story about that. When I came back from Vietnam, my parents acted like I'd been gone about a week. I'd been over there a year. My mother says to me, we're real proud of your brother. And I said, oh yeah, what did he do? And he said, well, he bribed a recruiting sergeant to get him into the National Guard so he wouldn't have to go to Vietnam. And I think I'll remember that to my dying day.
Well, I know what you're saying. I understand. So, you go to Navy. Where do you go to boot camp?
I went to boot camp in San Diego.
And are they trying to determine at some point what your specialties might be, where your interests lie?
Yeah, they gave us, the the battery test, the GCT and ARI and all that, and they somehow or another they figured I'd be a good radarman. So they sent me to school at Treasure Island, but I guess they neglected to think that about the fact that I'd grown up in San Rafael, which was probably 30 miles away. So I did more partying while I was in school than I did studying, and I wound up flunking out. And I got transferred from Radar A school to a destroyer in Long Beach. And that was the Harry E. Hubbard. That was in 1959.
And what would your job have been?
I was a decade. I spent 2 or 3 months in the deck force, and then a guy that I palled around with was a second-class ship fitter. He was SFM, metalsmith ship fitter, and he got me to transfer into our division, and I became a damage controlman in our division, and I made third class petty officer on the Hubbard.
And in time, how long would that have taken you to go from seaman to?
It took me from the day I enlisted to the day I made third class was just about a year, almost to the day. And during that period of time, we made a Westpac cruise, and when we were in Formosa, Kaohsiung, they asked for volunteers to go to a Chinese Formosan LST to run some Mike boats to evacuate the refugees off of Quemoy and Matsu. And so I volunteered. I was skipper of a Mike boat for probably a period of about 60 days.
Now, describe a little bit what a Mike boat is.
Well, a Mike boat is what are they, 65 feet long, it's steel hull, they have a ramp in the bow, twin engine, they have 2 671 Jimmies in them. They burn about 11 gallons of fuel an hour at battle speed, and they have a well deck that you can carry vehicles or personnel in, and we were detached to this Chinese LST, and in the mornings we'd go in and pick up the refugees off the islands and then bring them back to the LST, and then the Chi-Coms would start shelling the island right about daybreak, and then they'd shell it all day long, and then again the next morning we'd go in and get more refugees. I was 18 then when I had my first taste of hostile fire.
Now, were some of these refugees then wounded? And
oh yeah, you'd get anything from little babies to old men, old ladies. Some had been injured in the firing and so on, and some would die on the way to the LST.
now, how would you offload from the Mike boat onto the LST? How would you get your cargo from one to the
Well,
other?
what we would do is we'd run up on the ramp of the LST and drop our ramp, and then they would either be carried off or they'd walk off.
Now, the LST, was it out in the water, or was
Yeah,
it?
it was. I forget how far away from the island it was. It seemed like it was about 2 or 3 miles away from Quemoy and Matsu. And what they'd do is they'd have it anchored there, and we would discharge the refugees on board, and then they would use the davits and pull the Mike boat up while we slept and ate, and then we'd start over again the next night.
For some reason, I remember a little white wine from Quemoy and Matsu. It was something called like Guyano or Guyan or something that was
Well, I remember this stuff. It was it was
clear.
some kind of plum liquor. If you drank enough of it, I think it cooked your brain.
I remember it was pretty tough. So that lasted a couple of months, you say? And
Yeah, I had that duty for about 2 months, and then I was detached back to the Hubbard. The Hubbard was, let's see, I think I'm back in Yokosuka, and that's where I picked it up again, was in Yokosuka.
And then what happened?
We went back to the States, and I volunteered to go to BUDS training, UDT.
Now, wait, BUDS training, how does that?
Basic Underwater Demolition School.
Okay, okay.
I went through that in Coronado, and the fact is they put me on an accelerated course because they had asked for volunteers to go to Guatemala and train the Cubans for the Bay of Pigs invasion. And so I was down Guatemala training Cubans for the invasion. Even flew with them to Belize when they loaded them on board the 3 merchant ships that they had there for them.
And what was your job as far as the training?
Oh, I taught them basic damage control, shoring, emergency pipe repair, things like that.
For their 3 ships that they were?
Yeah, for the 3 ships. Each ship had a damage control crew that consisted of about 10 or 12 people, and I just taught them just basic damage control and pipe repair and so on like that.
Now, were most of them English-speaking Cubans?
There always was enough of them that spoke English that for the ones that didn't speak English, translated. But for the most part, they all understood English. They'd have trouble with some like unfamiliar words or something like that. So there was somebody there that could translate it, and the CIA had translators all through the camp in case you had any trouble.
Was there other kind of training going on around you?
Oh, sure. There was sniper training and so on and so forth, always going on. Physical training. Castro even had spies in the camp. He knew what was going on there before Washington did.
Now, can you remember roughly how many of these Cubans were involved in this?
I want to say that there was probably 1,500 or so. They called it Brigade, I think 2606 or something it was called. And that number was a serial number of somebody that died during training before I got there. And how they came up with these serial numbers, or what, I'm not sure.
Well, when you left after you'd done your training, how much longer was it before they actually went ashore at the Bay of Pigs?
About 4 or 5 days after I left Belize was when the invasion was.
Now, what was on their ships that would allow them to get to shore?
They had Zodiacs.
Now, what's a Zodiac?
It's an inflatable boat.
Mm-hmm.
It was before the days of what they use what they call now RIBs, rigid inflatable boats. The boat they used back then was a Zodiac, the French made.
Now, um, that doesn't carry very many people. How were they going to get 1,500 people roughly ashore to be an effective fighting force?
Well, I don't know. I know they loaded a lot of Zodiacs on board because when we flew in by helicopter to Belize, they were loading the ships then, and I know that a lot of them were Zodiacs, and it seems like they were even putting like Jeeps and so on the deck of these ships, and I don't know how they were going to get those ashore either.
Where were you then when you found out what a disaster that turned out to be?
I was in Coronado, I was at Miramar being debriefed. The CIA had an office at Miramar, and we were being debriefed from the mission, and when word came over, I believe, on national radio first before it hit TV. I think that's how we learned about it. And
What was the scuttlebutt around why the U.S. backed out?
well, it was the consensus among the Cubans was that Kennedy, I guess, kind of backed off because the Helena was supposed to do shore bombardment before the troops went ashore, and they claimed that the Helena radioed the ships and said there's no need for us to do shore bombardment because there's nobody there. Go ahead and go ashore, and the Helena steamed off and left them to their fate.
Now, the emblem you wear on your cap,
That's a trident.
and would you explain a little bit about what that means?
Well, that's the symbol for now the SEALs. They didn't have SEALs in my day. They came along in '62, I believe. At the time, Lieutenant Roy Boehm was the one that started the SEALs. In fact, he was SEAL 1.
And the particular trident then that you have, when did that come into being?
It became official part of the uniform, I believe, in '64, maybe somewhere along in there. Up until then, it was kind of like unofficial, but it became official sometime after the conception of the SEALs, and I know Zumwalt, when he was CNO, he had a lot to do with raising the Esprit Corps of the Navy and making things that were unofficial, official, and things like that.
I remember him well.
Yeah.
Haircuts, uniforms.
Yeah.
It was a different time in the Navy when Zumwalt was there.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure was.
Now, you've come back, your volunteer service on the Cuban trainees is over. What's next? Give me a time period now, where we are in time.
Okay, this was April, May '61.
Mm-hmm.
We were detached to this, what was it called? Special Boat Unit out of Coronado. Kennedy had bought 6. They were nasty class PT boats from Norway.
And when you use the term nasty, explain
well,
that.
they were designed, with the story we got, the admiral that designed them in the Norwegian Navy, his name was Nasty, Njasty, and they were called a nasty class. And they were triple plank mahogany, all Manel rivets, They had 2 Napier Deltic engines in them, and
Those were European engines?
yeah, made in England. They had British radar, Decca radar on them, British engines, British radar, and Norwegian hull. And we bought 6 of them. We also had they had been the PT 810 and 811, and they were redesignated PTF 1 and 2, and then the nasties were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, PTF. And
The PT stands for patrol?
patrol, torpedo, fast.
Mm-hmm.
And the 810 and 811 were aluminum hull, and they had 4 16-cylinder Rolls-Packard Allisons in them. And I learned one thing from those engines: I'd never go in an airplane that had those. But yeah, they ran on avgas, where the Napiers ran on JP5.
Now, what would have been the top speeds of these?
The 810 and 811 with fresh engines right off the dyno in Chesapeake Bay and off of Coronado were clocked on the measured mile right at 40 knots. And the nasties were just a little bit faster. They could do 40, 45.
Now, if you convert knots to miles per hour,
I think it's
what roughly?
40 knots is like 45 miles an hour.
Uh-huh.
That's a 89-ton vessel.
So with 4 engines, you had 4 screws?
Yes.
And so now the Allison engine, was that an American engine, or was that another English engine?
Well, I was told that they were interchangeable. The ones that were made by Rolls or Allison or Packard were all from the same blueprint. Whether Packard made them, Rolls made them, or whatever, they all came from the same blueprint.
And so then you were the ship's captain, is that?
Skipper.
The skipper of one of these boats. And how long did that last?
Oh, well, I was on the PT boats. I was a crewman. I was on them from '61. Went to Vietnam with them. '65, I rotated back to the States. I went to Vietnam '64 with the boats. I was assigned to MAC V SOG, Special Operations Group.
Out of where?
Out of Saigon.
Out of Saigon.
We were home ported in Da Nang. We would run missions north of the DMZ. We also had South Vietnamese Navy personnel on board that we were training to run the boats. We also had South Vietnamese UDT types. The UDT base was at a place called My Khe, right outside of Da Nang. It was like on a peninsula across the river from Da Nang. And the PT boat base, we called it the Spook base, was at a place called Sun Cha.
Now, you said you were a crewman at this time. Had your rank improved?
Oh yeah, I was second class, petty officer at this time.
So you're a second class petty officer, and underneath the skipper of the boat, where in the chain of command are you now?
Oh, I was, well, we had a boat skipper. Depending on the time, it would either be a commissioned officer or a senior chief. I was probably in the middle somewhere. We had seamen and firemen and third class and first class. At this time, I had converted from damage controlman to electronics technician.
And did you have to go to a school then to become an electronic technician?
I went to an accelerated A school at Treasure Island. I believe I was there 24 weeks, probably in 63. I was there 63, 64.
And did you have 2 tours then in Vietnam?
We had, the Vietnamese crews lived on a separate part of the base. And when there would be missions where we would go, it would be strictly an American crew, and there would be a mission where there was Vietnamese crew, and then there would be missions that were joint.
And did you always or never know what the SOG guys were doing? Did you have any idea what some of their missions were?
Oh, sure. We would be in on the mission.
Yeah, well, give me an example of some of the things they did.
Well, the North Vietnamese were putting out the disinformation that when the B-52s would go on their bombing run, that they had some type of secret way of determining what their flight plan was. And it turned out that the B-52s were filing a flight plan, and Hanoi was an international airport, and they were getting their flight plan there. But they were putting out the disinformation that they were picking it up somehow, and so somebody came up with the idea that they were using an old radar site on an island that was called Tiger Island, and it was just north of the DMZ. So one of our missions was to go ashore on that island and destroy the radar. So I went as the electronics man, and we went ashore. I believe what they did was they used a simulated mustard gas bomb, and the North Vietnamese evacuated the island, and we went ashore, and the radar that was on there, I mean, didn't even work. But what they had done is they had used an electric motor with a bicycle chain and hooked it up to the scanner that was on this tower to make the scanner go around, so when the satellite passed over, they could see that the scanner was turning. But there was no waveguide or anything going to a repeater, so all the scanner did was turn around. And in my report, I put that it was surface search radar. It wasn't even air search radar. And these great minds we had back in Saigon that were deciphering all this information kept telling me I was all wet, that this had to be the radar. And I said, well, look, this stuff, it doesn't even work. Well, that was, I remember the first time I got debriefed from one of those missions, it was a Lieutenant Colonel Clyde Russell at MACV, SOG, that debriefed me. And he said, this has got to be wrong, can't be surface search, this has got to be air search. And I said, even if it was, it doesn't work, Well, we see it going around. So anyway.
Now, what other type of mission might you have been on then?
We went on another mission. Some South Vietnamese UDT types had been taken prisoner on a mission to a town called Hai Dung, and they were being held at the naval garrison there. And we went in. I think 4 had been taken prisoner. By the time we got there, 2 of them were still alive, and one of them didn't want to go back, and we brought the other one back. So of the 4, only 1 came back to the south.
Was that pretty atypical of what the SOG teams did?
Yeah.
Now, we were talking like there were 2 tours. were both times you involved with SOG operations?
Oh, yeah.
And was it, how long would a tour have been?
Well, actually, I was there a year, from 64 to 65. I came back to the States. I went to shore duty at Mare Island Naval Shipyard, and I was an instructor at the PBR school. That's
PBR.
River Patrol Boat.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there 3 years, a little over 3 years on shore duty, I was detached 3 or 4 times. TDY, they called it in those days, TAD in those days.
Temporary additional duty?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would be detached back to SOG for either a special mission or in an advisory capacity.
Would you go all the way back to Vietnam?
All the way back to Vietnam. They'd fly me over from Travis, and usually either Pan Am or Qantas fly me right to Saigon, and I'd be briefed at SOG. At some point, the name Special Operations Group was changed to Studies and Observation Group because it was a spook outfit, and they didn't want a spook outfit having a spook name. So they changed it to Studies and Observation Group, because I remember one set of orders I got said Special Operations Group, and then when I got there, they said, "Oh, this is a security violation. We've got to burn these orders and retype some new ones."
So when you go back for a special mission, what kind of a special mission would you get?
Well, again, another one of the missions was to go back to Tiger Island again, and another time was they.
What was the Tiger Island the second time?
When?
What was the reason for the second?
Oh, go back and check the radar again. You know.
Oil the bicycle chain?
The bicycle chain and the washing machine motor, yeah.
And the rank now must be changing again, too.
No, I stayed second class. I was given a battlefield appointment to warrant because I was an advisor to a South Vietnamese Navy warrant, and they thought, well, he'd lose face if he was being advised by a E5, so they gave me an appointment to W1, not to exceed 90 days, I believe it was.
Did you get to pay?
Oh, sure, I got to pay, you bet.
And that must have been a nice 90 days.
Oh, yeah, it sure was.
Because you got the per diem and the pay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was getting per diem and cost of living and all that good stuff.
Now, when you traveled, what kind of clearance would your orders have to get you over and back?
Oh, I traveled civilian clothes with secret clearance, top secret.
And so you had no trouble getting on an airplane anymore?
No, I got on first and off first. I got off with the diplomatic pouch. Actually,
It's this one.
And so you carried the mail over there. Now, when you went to MACV, was that at Da Nang?
that
Or
was in
town?
Saigon.
It was in town.
Right. In Da Nang, the MACV was at Naval Support Activity Da Nang. It was a building they called the White Elephant, and that was on, what was that, Docklop Street, Riverfront Street, and on the opposite side of the river where Mike, the UDT base, and where the spook base was.
And were you involved at all or get in communications with the guys that were in the Delta patrols and those?
Oh
kind of
yeah,
things?
I'd like when I'd go back to Saigon for debriefing and so, or whatever before I'd come back to the States. I'd always they always put the SEAL teams and UDTs in this same hotel in what was that called? Cholon. It was the Capitol Hotel. They always put the Navy guys on one floor, separate from the Army and whatever was there. And I'd talk to the guys that were down in the Delta, either at, let's see, there was a base down there, Band Me To It, was a PBR UDT base down in the Delta. They were the UDT types down there. They were known as the devils with green faces.
Why? Because of the way they put their makeup
Yeah,
on?
right.
Yeah. And did you get any stories out of those guys on what it was like?
Yeah, I did.
Well, the stories that I got were pretty bad. So after you got back to the mainland from these special missions, at some point you stopped doing that?
Yeah, I was discharged in 1969, July 2nd, 69. I got out.
And why did you elect to get out?
Well, they gave me the choice. I couldn't pass the diving physical anymore. Kind of my ears, my station tubes had collapsed, and so I couldn't equalize anymore under pressure. So they gave me the choice of getting out on disability or going to a PBR base in the Mekong Delta. And it didn't take me long to figure out which one I wanted to do.
Now, your tubes collapsed. Was that because of the type of depths you were having to go to, or?
Well, I had an infection in my station tubes and didn't know it. Our corpsman was sent to Saigon. No, I believe he went on R&R. And they assigned us an Army E9 corpsman that knew about as much about diving medicine as my children do. And we were retrieving a Connex box that had fallen off of an American President Line ship. It was some gear that had been sent to us from Coronado, and one of the slings broke or something, and the thing fell in the water. So we were retrieving that, and I kept telling this corpsman I was having trouble with my ears, and he looked in and said everything was all right. Well, on one of the dives, I blacked out when my left tube collapsed, and then I went to the surface too fast, and my other one collapsed. And so anyway, I couldn't pass the diving physical, and so that was the end of my diving days.
Now, does that give you any kind of a medical discharge, or?
Yeah, I got disability retirement
From that?
from the Navy, yeah.
Okay. So, what's the year now again that you?
Okay, this is 1969.
1969, and your final duty then was where?
I was an instructor at the PBR school at Mare Island Naval Shipyard in Vallejo.
So was that, when you say an instructor, would you teach the whole ship, or would you teach a portion of it?
Well, what I taught was basic demolition, how to use the plastic explosive. We had a base camp out in the Sacramento River Delta. That's basically what I taught, how to place your charges and how to set your fuses and so on. And basic safety instructions with the use of C4.
And so you're single or married at this time? Or?
I am married at this time with 3 children when I was discharged.
So at what point in your career did you get married?
I was married in right after I returned from Guatemala, and in no, I take that back. I was married in '63.
And how'd you meet your wife?
She was like a friend of a friend, and we had been introduced friendship lasted longer than the marriage did.
Now,
But
what was her name? What maiden name?
her name was Catherine
And maiden name?
Sweat.
Sweat. Like Jimmy Sweat? The history of your wife's family, was she Irish also, or?
You know, I really don't know. Her father had passed away when I met her, and her mother was a very private person. So I never knew too much about her family history.
So you're married while you're in the service, and you have 3 children in the service.
Yes.
So how did the children fall out? And
Okay, the first one was born when I was in Vietnam in '65. Then the second one was born.
is that boy, girl?
It was a boy,
Okay. What's his name?
Gregory.
Okay.
He has a degree in microbiology. He works for the RAND Corporation, which is a cover for the CIA. He's in Japan, up on that island up in the north part of Japan where they have that spook base up there.
Is it Hokkaido?
I forget the name of the island, but there's a
okay.
base up there that
Yeah.
the CIA has with the Japanese version of the CIA, and they listen to the Russians now, Soviets then. Last I heard, that's where he was still at. I have a son. His name is Patrick.
Second one?
Second one, he was born in '66, and he lives in Yarrington, Nevada. Works for an auto parts dealership, auto parts company. I have a daughter, Kelly. She is a nurse, again up in Fernley, Nevada. And my second marriage was to, her name was Brenda. We were married in 76. She passed away in '93 from cancer. And I have 2 children from that marriage, Stacy and Valerie. Stacy was born in '78. Valerie was born in '80. Stacy is, they're both college graduates. Stacy is the executive assistant to the CEO of a company in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's health food, vitamins, whatnot. It's Forever Living, name of the company. They have offices all over the world, Hawaii and so on. And Valerie, from the time she was in the first grade, wanted to be a policeman, and she is a policeman at Sonoma State University. She graduated just about a year ago from the police academy in Windsor.
That's marvelous. Now, what did you do then after you got out of the service?
Well, I knocked around from job to job. I drove tow trucks and sold cars and whatnot. I probably had what now they call post-traumatic stress syndrome. And finally, in '74, I went to work at Mare Island Naval Shipyard on the submarines. And I went into a program there that they called ocean engineering. It was the spy subs, the Russell, the Parche, Pogey, Seawolf. Let's see, I'm missing one. Salmon. They were the ones that put the tap on the undersea cable up in Vladivostok. There's a book out about some of the exploits. It's called Blind Man's Bluff. I donated my copy to the museum here. The author dedicated it to me. She says, to Harry, one of the unsung heroes of ocean engineering at Mare Island, Sherry Sontag. And see, what that comes from is that the crews on the submarines were getting presidential unit citations, Navy unit commendations, so on and so forth. But the civilian technicians, they didn't know how to cover it up, and they didn't know how to explain it, you know, if the press got a hold of it. So we got our paychecks, and that was the only recognition we got for our efforts in the program.
Is that where you then retired from?
I retired from Mare Island Naval Shipyard in '95. During my tenure at Mare Island, during Desert Storm, we had some downtime, and they asked for volunteers to go to Saudi Arabia for Desert Storm, so I went over there. I was training Marine Corps Emotechs on how to put dunnage in containers. We were shipping the ordnance all over the country and back to some of the MO depots in the States.
So the term dunnage would apply to what then exactly?
Well, the dunnage is like you would put in ammunition and so on, and then you'd block it and brace it with lumber.
So the lumber is the dunnage.
That's dunnage.
Yeah. So at some point, though, you got a presidential unit citation?
I received the Navy Civilian Presidential Unit Citation after the program had been compromised between the Walkers and that FBI agent. We were awarded the Navy Civilian Presidential Unit Citation by Clinton. It's a triangular shaped medal. It's red and green. I have it on another hat. I was told that when we were awarded that it was like the first time it had been awarded since the Civil War. I think Lincoln was the last president to award that to anybody.
Amazing. So as civilians, you received that.
We finally received the Presidential Unit Citation.
And how many, roughly, people would that have involved there at Mare Island?
Well, it would vary, you know, from time to time. There was a nucleus of people that were cleared all the time, which I was one.
Go ahead.
Sure.
He needs to see it. Don't watch that. Yeah, go ahead.
We're right at
Oh, you're just about time. Okay. There, okay, well, why don't you go ahead and finish your thought there?
Okay. Okay. There was a nucleus of people that were cleared in ocean engineering, and then as the program would expand, they would bring other people in. They would brief them and clear them for the program, and then as the work diminished, they would phase them out, debrief them out of the program. But I was one of the core workers where whether there was work or not, they kept us in the program. I worked for, my foreman's name was Jerry Odell. He was, in my estimation, and a lot of other guys, probably the best foreman on Mare Island Naval Shipyard. He believed in rewarding his workers.
I wanted to go back a little bit. What year was it that you moved from New York to Tampa?
About 43 or 44.
And you were how old then?
I was 2 or 3 years old.
Okay. And then when you moved out to the West Coast, you were how old
I was 15.
And that would have been after the war then?
Yeah, that was 1950, 55, 56.
Okay. This is probably a good place to pause because we need to change tape.
Okay.
back, when you talked about your brother a little bit, where did he end up in your life then?
He lives in Petaluma. He's married, has 2 boys, and he's a general contractor.
And at some point, and I don't know where it happened in your life. You say your dad died,
My dad died in 86.
and was it sudden, or had he been?
No, he hadn't been ill at all. He had retired from the Mastermates and Pilots Union in, let me see.
What exactly would that have been? Master Mason?
Master Mates.
Mace?
Mates and Pilots. It's
Oh, okay, Mates and Pilots.
Yeah,
Mates,
for the-
M-A-T-E-S, Mates.
Yeah, Mates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he retired in 71, 72, somewhere along in there, and he went to work as a marine surveyor and then started his own company. He had, the company's still in business. The man that bought it from him still operates it, but it was one of the foremost marine surveying companies anywhere. They had a wide reputation. He had accounts in Denmark and all over Europe.
What would a marine surveyor do?
Well, they're like ship inspectors. They say, for example, a ship would come into San Francisco. His big account was East Asiatic Steamship Company, ScanStar, Johnson Lines, and so on. They would go aboard and they'd check it for if it needed repairs or chandlering or whatever, and then he would, like if it needed to go into a yard, he'd solicit bids for the repair work in the yard. And then as the work progressed, the steamship company would deposit into his trustee account the money for the repairs at the yard. And then as the work progressed, he would pay the shipyard for the work that they would be doing on the ships. And he and another captain that worked for him, by the name of Larry Doyle, they did all the deck surveying. And then he had a man by the name of Carl Morgan, who was a childhood friend. They had sailed together in the Merchant Marine. He did all the engineering surveying, and Carl was chief engineer. And when my dad got his captain's license, he had Carl come aboard his ship and be his chief engineer.
Sound like a pretty well managed and
Oh yeah.
sound like one of those good ideas that really went well.
Oh sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when he died, then was your first mother, or his first wife, still alive?
Oh yeah. My mother's still alive. They were still married. Yeah.
Still married. And where does she live then?
She lives in Nevada. Actually, it's Ignacio in Marin County. She's let's see, she's 90, probably going to outlive us all.
Yeah, that's something.
If for no other reason, spite.
She's in good health then,
Very good, yeah.
and lucid. And
Very lucid, yes. She has drifty days, but for the most part, she's all there.
yeah.
Yeah, swims every day, and
So, to the grandkids, is she still
oh yeah,
very popular? And,
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. They always go see her, and she seems to enjoy my daughter Stacy more so than any of the other grand for some reason. That she enjoys seeing them and being around them.
Now, you retired from Mare Island, and somewhere or other you worked your way here to the valley.
Well, I used to come here 85, 84, like on spring break. We used to stay out at Sam's out in Desert Hot Springs. And in 85, my late wife and I, we discovered Outdoor Resorts on Ramon Road, and we bought a lot there. So we would come here Christmas and Easter and so on, Thanksgiving. And then when she became ill, our lifestyle changed. Of course, she had to quit work, and so we sold a lot. And then she passed away in 93. And when I retired in 95, I couldn't stand not working, so I went to work at a convalescent home, hospital. I was maintenance director, and after I was there a short period of time, I met the now love of my life. Her name is Irma. She was the activities director there, and I brought her down here one time. And, she fell in love with the place, and so we live half of the year at Outdoor Resort. We have a triple slide fifth wheel we live in, and then we have a double slide motorhome that we travel in the rest of the year.
So you're here at the museum then when you're in the desert?
Yeah, I love being here, and I
What got you to the museum? Did you have friends here before, or did you just wander in the door?
I actually, the way I found it, there was an ad in the paper. They wanted a maintenance man 2 days a week, Sunday and Monday. And I thought, I had volunteered before with the Cathedral City Citizens on Patrol, and I kind of got away from it. So I was looking for a place to volunteer, so I thought, well, gee, I could save some money. So I came here and told them I'd volunteer for the job. Well, they'd already hired somebody, but they still said they needed a volunteer. So I talked to Tony, and he said he needed somebody to help with the ground support equipment. So Stuart Bechtel and I, Bus, that's our thing. We work on all that. We've gotten a few things running that weren't, and resurrected some things that probably should have been buried.
So at what point, when the temperature reached what degree, do you leave here and head north then?
Well, we kind of gypsy it. There's no set time. When the spirit moves us, we jump in the motorhome and go. In fact, we just got back from Puerto Penasco, Mexico. We were down there a week or so, and but usually.
Do you go over to Pattaya Beach in that area? Or
I don't know where that is.
well, when you hit Puerto Penasco, where the commercial buildings are, the courthouse and all that, you can turn left and go under that.
Yeah, we go left. We stay at that RV park. I think it's Miramar. It's right next to Manny's.
Yeah, okay, well, I know right where.
Yeah, everybody knows where Manny's is. Yeah.
Well, a friend of mine has a home there at Los Conchas. And,
Yeah, there's some nice homes there. Yeah.
well, he's been there for like 25 years.
Oh.
He was down there when they didn't have water or electricity or whatever. So the kids are all doing fine. You're traveling, and if in your memories now of your military career, is there anything that sticks out above any little something that was really humorous or story that you'd never have forgotten?
Well, I'll tell you one. It wasn't humorous, but one that I've never forgotten. I was when I was on the Hubbard. We were in the Straits of San Bernardino. This is in the Philippines, and this was just before the Quemoy Matsu evacuation. It would be the Hubbard wasn't air conditioned, so the only way you could be cool at night was to sleep on deck. So I was sleeping back on the fantail, and this leading seaman from the deck gang came back and said the OD wanted everybody off the fantail because they were going to do some high-speed maneuvers during the night. So there was a cable reel back there that they used for putting what they called a fish in the water. It was to take water temperatures and so on. So I hid behind that cable reel and stayed on the fantail to sleep. And this leading seaman and two other guys, the other two guys were gunner's mates, they had gotten the keys to the small arms lockers and had taken every small arm that was on the ship, took one of the rubber life rafts and inflated it and put it over the side while the ship was underway, put all the small arms into the inflatable life raft, and paddled away from the ship, and they were going out to join the Hucks. Now this happened. I swear to God, this happened. And it was Stafford, his name, Clifford, and the other guy's name was Gott. And somewhere along the line, somebody realized that the small arms locker had been emptied, so they, at 2 o'clock in the morning, they awakened the entire ship and had everybody muster on deck, and 3 guys were missing, and a life raft. So the captain, whose name was Riley, he and my dad were friends, as a matter of fact. They had met on the East Coast someplace, because right after the Quemoy-Matsu evacuation, we were in Kaohsiung again, and my dad came aboard ship because his ship was in Kaohsiung. He came aboard and recognized Captain Riley, and so the 3 of us went ashore together. So anyway, the captain turned the ship around, and they fired up the big spotlights that they had, and they saw the guys trying to paddle to this one island, and so they got them all back on board with all the small arms, and put them in leg irons and whatnot, had them up in the chief's quarters, and they took them to the brig in Subic, and I understand they court-martialed them in Pearl Harbor.
Now, Huck, would you go over what Huck was?
The Hucks were they were like a communist insurgency in the Philippines back then. I think they're still active in the southern islands. I think they have ties now to Al Qaeda, but they're like a separatist movement in the Philippines. But they don't enjoy the popularity they did, say, in the 50s and 60s.
Were these guys Filipino in nationality? Or
No, they were all gringos.
They were gringos.
Yeah, they were one of them. Something else I just happened to think of. There's a book out about this also. It's called The Arnheider Affair. When I was in Vietnam, I was a skipper of a swift boat for a while. A swift boat is a PCF, Patrol Craft Fast. And a DER, it was the USS Vance, opened up on me with their 3-inch. And we were identifying ourselves as an American craft and everything. Fortunately, their fire control wasn't working too good, and they missed. But this Captain Arnheider was they wound up court-martialing him, and they relieved him of his command in Manila. The flotilla of destroyers that he was in was tied up alongside the Marcab, which was a repair ship, and the Commodore relieved him of his command, and they had him confined to quarters on the Sperry in Subic.
For that incident?
For that, well, that and a bunch of other things. You read that book, I mean, this guy was a rabid-ass idiot. And how he ever got command of a ship, I'll never know.
Now, you have one more little badge on your hat.
Oh, that's the Presidential Unit Citation from the Navy.
From Mare Island.
No, the civilian Presidential Units, the Navy Civilian Presidential Unit Citation I got from Mare Island. This is the Navy Presidential Unit Citation. I got that when I was assigned to Mac V. SOG.
And I noticed you brought in one artifact here.
Yeah, I'm going to donate that to the museum. My father brought this back from from Japan.
Could you hold that up around your chest height there?
Let's see.
Could maybe pull it out of the sheath and.
Let's see here. Let's see. I don't know what we can.
Yeah, that's doing pretty good right there.
Yeah.
Hold it up with a handle. Yeah. Now, what's the significance of this?
You know, I'm not sure. I know this was a samurai sword, and my dad told me that he traded a carton of cigarettes for it to someone. I really don't remember the whole story anymore, but he brought this and a hara-kiri knife back from Japan.
Now, a hara-kiri knife, what was that?
That was they used to commit suicide with. Has like a serpentine blade. I don't know whatever happened to that. In all the moving we did when I was a child, somewhere along the line, it disappeared. But this I never let out of my possession, and I'm going to donate it to the museum here.
Well, we need to get that to David Thompson. And, do you have any questions you would like to ask? I know you didn't get to.
Yeah, what was the name of the ship? What was it? Not Mannheim. What was the name of the ship of the destroyer that he was the captain of?
Oh, Riley was captain of the Harry E. Hubbard.
Oh,
That was the one that the guys were going to join the Hooks.
oh,
That was DD 748. Yeah, as a
and
matter of fact,
his name was Riley.
Riley, yeah, right, and he was, matter of fact, he was married to one of the Roths, as in William Matson Roth, you know, Matson Steamship Company. His wife was one of the Roths. I understand that he's retired now out of the Navy and out of the Merchant Marine. He, naturally being married to a Roth, he got captaincy of one of the Matson Navigation Company ships, and then he retired from Master Mates and Pilots Union. And I believe, last I heard, that he lived in Marin County.
One of the things that went through my mind about your dad was that he was driving ships during World War II, wasn't he?
Right.
Was he a part of any of the convoys and things that?
He was, that convoy that was put together up in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, where it was the largest armada of ships ever assembled. It was when they were taking war material to Europe. He was in that convoy, and one of the stories I remember him telling was that they were, you know, the wolf packs were just torpedoing those merchant ships. It was like shooting ducks in a barrel, and he said that you couldn't stop and help these guys that were in the water. The only thing you could do was throw them flotation devices. And I know when he returned from that trip, his hair was gray. It was black when he went over, and it was gray when he came back.
And so that one convoy, that one big convoy, was the one time that he was in the North Atlantic as a skipper of a ship.
He was still a mate.
I
then.
see.
I think
He was
he was second mate at that time. It was when he came back from that he made chief mate, and it was shortly after that that he got his captain's license, and that was when he went aboard the American Sailor.
Which was what, part sail and part, did it have sails? It was a sailing ship?
No, that was the training ship from the
Maritime.
Maritime Academy in St. Petersburg. It was a steamship.
Steamship. Well, I have explored as much as I can think about. And Harry, I'm gonna, like I say, I've always felt sorry for any guy named Harry because that's my name too. So I could still see that priest hole, and you wonder, how the hell can I call this baby Harry?
Yeah.
So I want to thank you, and really it's been a
Thanks
privilege.
for having me. I really appreciate it.